seen. Suriname, when depositing its instruments of accession, also did a notification to the Minamata Secretariat saying that we believe that our ASGM sector is more than insignificant. We have to, like I mentioned, you can find all these documents um, on the website of the Minamata Convention, so you can check it there. All right, we have to submit our first NAP in 2021, and then also some reports that you can also find on the Minamata website. I put the links here for your information, and we have to report in December of 2021. Okay, and I think that was it. Let me see. So no, sorry, process for formulating for the ASGM sector. We have a specific process how we are going about formulating the NAP. And
I'm sorry for
yes.
interrupting, Gina. You have 1 minute left.
Yes, thank you. And this is the content of our NAP. It looks a lot like, of course, what is in Annex C. So next steps, we have to finalize our first NAP, and we have to deposit it no later than. And then there are some projects, but my colleagues will be talking about those. Thank you.
Thank you, Gina, for giving us an introduction on the Minamata Convention, and especially this topic on ASGM Article 7. Well, before we continue with the next topic on the agenda, I would like to welcome the Minister of Natural Resources. Unfortunately, he couldn't, he had some technical difficulties for signing in earlier. So I would like to invite him to give his speech, his thoughts on the topic of today's webinar. Minister Abiamofo, welcome. I turn to you.
Thank you very much. Such a great forum this afternoon. Collega minister van Ruimtelijke Ordening en Milieu. Geachte aanwezigen van NIMOS, de beide ministeries NH en Ruimtelijke Ordening. Distinguished consultants, experts, and other guests this afternoon. Please accept my apologies for being late this afternoon. That was caused by by miscommunication. As the Minister of Natural Resources, I welcome this opportunity to address this important meeting on the next steps in reducing mercury emissions from the artisanal and small-scale gold mining sector in Suriname. Gold accounts for more than 80%, as you know, of Suriname's income from exports, making it the major driver of Suriname's economy. Data from 2016 show that artisanal and small-scale gold mining in Suriname is responsible for almost 60% of all Suriname's gold production, and it employs an estimated 40,000 workers. On paper, Suriname produced about 32,800 kilograms of gold. That was in 2019, and around 60% of it came from artisanal and small-scale mining. This data reflects the importance of artisanal and small-scale gold mining to the economy of Suriname. And just like other countries, we use mercury in artisanal and small-scale mining operations. The country used an estimated 60, almost 60 tons, 56 of mercury in 2018. And none was being recovered, is being recovered. Despite of the importance of revenues from gold mining to the economy, the government of Suriname recognizes the negative impact of the use of mercury to both the environment and human health. The government is also well aware of the fact that large parts of communities living in the interior of Suriname, they depend on artisanal and small-scale gold mining as means of existence. There is a severe impact of artisanal and small-scale gold mining on people living in those local communities. For example, water that is no longer suitable for human consumption or for aquatic fauna. That's just an example. The use or introduction of standards for mercury-free mining is a must. Artisanal and small-scale gold mining inherits a strong social and cultural character, as large parts of communities depend on the sector as important source of income. In regulating the sector and working towards formalization, it is therefore key to engage with the local communities in decision-making processes and to involve them actively in the development of new mine exploitation and management technologies. Aware of the fact that the artisanal and small-scale gold mining sector is not very well regulated, and that most small-scale mining activities are informal, but still crucial for upholding livelihoods in the communities. The government made regulation of the small-scale gold mining sector as one of the priority areas. Within this scope, the Vice President of Suriname, Mr. Brunswijk, established a commission for regulating the small-scale gold mining sector. And the main task of this commission is to outline the policy of this sector in the areas of finance, environment, security, and social inclusion and development. Existing initiatives such as the project Improving Environmental Management in the Mining Sector of Suriname, with emphasis on the artisanal and small-scale gold mining, and the National Action Plan on Reducing Mercury Emissions, will be used as important instruments to reach towards a sustainable and durable structure of the sector. Engagement of communities in their development using the FPIC method, free prior informed consent, as a tool will be a key strategy in this process of regulating the artisanal and small-scale mining sector. Sustainable long-term mining provisions, clean, efficient, smart technologies will be tested also, and they will be gradually mainstreamed within the communities. The communities should adapt the new way, the new technologies, and they will be closely involved and guided in the steps towards developing best practices. As the ratification of the Minamata Convention by Suriname was evident, the administration Santoki Brunswijk in collaboration with relevant partners, commits to pursue in responsible and sustainable development for all. We believe strongly that through communication, engagement, and collaboration with stakeholders, a profound, formal, and safe base for sustainable, or maybe I should say less polluting, artisanal small-scale gold mining can be achieved. Once again, to conclude, I apologize for the miscommunication that caused me to join the meeting later as planned this afternoon, but I wish you a fruitful webinar and I look forward to the outcomes hereof. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Minister Abiamofo, for your thoughts with regards to this topic of the webinar, and also to emphasize that engagement with local communities is very important when it comes to this topic, and informing us about the policy of the government to be able to implement activities within the ASGM. Thank you very much. Yes, without further ado, we'll continue with the next presentation. And the next presentation is on inventories on mercury releases, Suriname case. And the speaker of this on this presentation is Rodrigo Romero. Rodrigo Romero has a PhD in organic chemistry. He is an environmental consultant, and his field of activities are air quality and waste management, design and setting up of laboratories for chemical analysis in matrix as soil, air, waste, and water, and the implementation of analytical methodologies, laboratory accreditation and certification processes, data quality. He is also involved in multilateral environmental agreements such as the Stockholm Basel and the Minamata Conventions. And he was also involved in the implementation of projects related to international chemical agenda treaties within private and public sectors based on the JEF guidelines. I would like to invite Rodrigo to give us a presentation on inventories on mercury releases Suriname case. Rodrigo? The floor is yours.
Okay, I will start immediately by sharing my. Do you hear me well? Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, okay. So I know that we have very short time, so I will try to cover all the topic that I intend to share with you. And I will share with you some important aspect of the inventory of emission and releases of mercury, because this is an important part within the framework of the Minamata Convention. But let me highlight something really important. So you can build up inventories, okay? So the most important is to be able to update this inventory on a regular basis, because this is the most effective measure, is the most effective tool in order to check, to verify the progress of all your measures that you are implementing within the Stockholm Convention, as very clearly Gina explained before in relation to the ASGM sector. So the most important, once again, is to be able to update on a regular basis this inventory. That's the reason. So it's important. I will try to clarify a few concepts that are behind the inventories and how to building and the calculation. So first of all, why inventories? Also, you know, the most important if you want to build something, if you need a good foundation, you need to know what do you have in the beginning. So this is the reason of the inventory. In the case of within the Minamata Convention, so the convention proposed the use of the toolkit for identification and quantification of mercury releases. Why? Because this gives you the possibility to establish a baseline of mercury in your country and to get a common starting point with other countries in order to compare the progress that you are reaching during the implementation phases of the convention. One important aspect, first of all, with the toolkit, okay, is the mass balance principle. For people that are used to work with inventory, especially in air quality, we have a lot of different type of inventory. Normally, the inventory is associated with emission factors. But in the case of the Minamata Convention and mercury, the approach is slightly different because we use a mass balance concept, okay? And the mass balance concept, the mass balance principle is based on the fact that mercury is an element, meaning that it's not created, it's not extracted, okay? And it's not produced in process. Okay, let me give you just an example to clarify this. Let's take a coal-fired power plant for electricity generation. Okay, so this facility is working based on raw material, which is coal. Okay, let's say in this case, if the use of this coal, which contain a huge amount of mercury, okay, let's say this 100% which is going in the facility and in the process should go out through different media. Let's say to air. Oh, sorry, just I have some technical. Okay, there. To air or to. Oh, it's not working. Okay.
Maybe you can try to unshare it and then share it again, Rodrigo.
No. It's something that I don't know why. No. I can switch. Something happened. Let me. It was a stop, my presentation. Oh.
Can you try to unshare it and then share it again?
Yeah, I will.
Thank you.
Once again, let's go again. No, it's stuck. Oh. Okay, now.
Is it working?
Now it's okay. So, as I mentioned, so this, as I mentioned, so based on this principle, so all the mercury that goes in the process should come out, okay? And we say that this come out as emission to air, releases to water, and releases to as ashes, releases to land or to waste. And this is a very tricky thing because you have to calculate, you have to know how much can go to air, how much can go to water, and so on. Okay. Another important aspect also that we have to clarify in building up this inventory is to understand how mercury is moving in the society and the releases to the environment. And there we have the concept of the life cycle inventory. If we take production, we take use, and we take disposal, all this process, all this cycle will produce emission, once again, to land, water, waste, and air. And this is the important thing that we have to collect and in order to quantify all this emission. In this picture, we see clearly if we take from the left side, so this is important for quantification, the input, okay, where we have the mercury in raw material, we have the life cycle inventory with all the processes that involve from raw material acquisition, production, processing, with intentional use of mercury, use or reduce, recycling, and so on. And then the output, okay? The second point, important point, is the mass balance equation. This mass balance equation states in the following way. So to estimate the mercury releasing to any certain pathway Y, okay? So this will be equal to, first of all, an activity rate multiplied by an input factor and multiplied by what we call an output distribution factor, okay? So if we take again an example with the same coal-fired power plant, let's say we are going to calculate the emission to air, okay, the releases to air, and based on the same equation, we say that these releases, this emission to air will be equal what? The activity rate. What is the activity rate? Is the quantity, the amount of coal annually used by this facility. This should be multiplied by the input factor, and by the input factor we understand the mercury concentration in the feed material, in this ore, okay, in this coal, in this case. And this will be multiplied, as we mentioned, by an output distribution factor that associated to the coal combustion, okay? This is quite briefly, this is all that we need in order to build up an mercury inventory for emission and releases. This is all, okay? And now when we move to the mercury inventory, we take first the level 1 of mercury, okay? So what is the main contribution that the mercury release inventory, the toolkit provide to us? First of all, provide us with the 4 input factors, okay? This is that can be from different media, and all this information is taken from developed countries, okay, from Europe or from the US. The other important contribution from the toolkit in order to build up the inventory is that provide a list of different sources category where the mercury is present in your country. Another additional contribution is that the toolkit provides us with the full output distribution factor. And all this information is organized within this Excel spreadsheet where you can calculate one by one the emission and releases of mercury from all the sources that are existing in your country. As an example here, in the case of inventory level 1, which is the simplified version, you can see that the only active part of the spreadsheet is the activity rate that you can introduce in your calculation, and you can also answer the question whether different sources of mercury are present or not in your country. Only the white cells are able to be used in this toolkit level 1. All the other, the input factor and the output distribution factor are fixes, okay? So just to verify, if you put your activity rate, let's say 200,000 a ton of coal that is annually used in this facility. So you calculate by your input factor, let's say in this case 0.15 gram per ton of mercury in ore, and multiply by the output distribution factor, you will get the same data as the same figure as you see. So 26.4 ton of mercury that are released in this facility, in this case, to air. In the same way, you can calculate the second one, which is the release to waste, okay, which is 3.6. Okay, now when we move to the second level of the inventory, just let me highlight that in the level 1 of the mercury inventory, as you can see, your ability to you are just forced to put the activity rate and no more than that, and then the calculations are automatically. When we move to inventory, the updated version, the refined version of the mercury, which is the level 2, so you are a very, very important thing, which is related mainly to the output scenarios, because you have a wide range of different scenarios, even for the same type of facilities. If you have two power plants, but the output scenario could be highly different, and of course, your result will be totally different. So first of all, in inventory level 2, in the refined version, so you can use what is the toolkit it proposed in terms of the input factor, or you can put your own input factor, something that later we will see was the case of the Suriname inventories. And much more important is all the possible output scenario that you can get in your facility. Let's say having different type of particulate matter filter for many type of emission control devices, wet scrubber, dry filter, and so on. So all this can be modified depending on the quality of your information. And this is the most important thing, because as I mentioned in the beginning, you start with your preliminary inventory, but the main challenge is to be able regularly to be able to update the data, because is as I mentioned, is the way to verify the progress of all your measures that you are implementing in your country. In terms of the result, quite briefly, so the inventory, the picture is quite similar from inventory level 1, the simplified version done in Suriname in 2016, in relation to the second inventory, the refined version conducted during 2018. So we clearly see that an overwhelming source of emission, which is of course the primary metal production. In this case, of course, is gold mining. The difference between both inventory was 799 and 97 in the second one, in the refining inventory for the emission and releases from gold mining. Here we see more clearly that, well, as I mentioned, the overwhelming emission and releases is gold mining, but in addition, we have other but very low emission sources like consumer product with intentional use of mercury. We can say thermometers and several different devices that are used in medical care. Waste incineration also have some emission and releases, and waste disposal as well. But what is really interesting, and in relation to the preliminary inventory based on toolkit level 1 in comparison to the refined version, was specifically see in the if we see the total estimation of emission to air, that, by the way, you understand the most critical aspect related to the Minamata Convention, of course, is the emission to air, where we see that at global scale, the ASGM sector responds for nearly 40% of the global emission of mercury. Okay, so what we see is that from gold mining, which is 16.8 ton, so this is also the most important part of this emission is coming from the gold mining with mercury amalgamation, as you see, is 16.2 in comparison to 600 grams of emission to air from the other method than mercury amalgamation, which is the large scale gold mining. Okay. And
Rodrigo, sorry, you
yes,
have just 1 minute left.
Okay, I'm almost done. What is important to mention and to understand that moving from the basic, from the simplified version of the inventory to the refined version, where as I mentioned before, you can use your own data, you can use your own input factor and your own output distribution factor. This was the case because based on internal information from Suriname, from large scale gold mining, the input factor, which the default factor that was 15 grams of mercury per metric ton, was changed to 1 single gram based on the information from those companies, and this gave the result that we are seeing in this picture. So the updating, as I mentioned, is a key element because this will be gradually improve your data. Of course, because of time, I didn't mention that in the process of data collection to build up your inventory, of course, you have to make a lot of approximation, a lot of extrapolation because lack of information in different sectors. So that's the reason I stress again, the most important is the continuous updating of the inventories. Okay, so as final remark, I just want to say that, well, Gina mentioned very well, so all the process related to ASGM sector and the Article 7. We know that the recommendation or the requirement from the Minamata Convention is to reduce, or whether it's feasible to eliminate the use of mercury. And all the legal and regulatory framework and so on. I just want to highlight, to finish my presentation, is that during one of my visits to Suriname, I had the chance to meet wonderful people at the university, Dr. Paul Auboter, Dr. Jan Skav. I had the chance to visit the lab, and I have seen a wonderful, frankly speaking, I have been involved in analytical characterization of pollutant for many years. So I have seen a wonderful work with many restrictions that has been done. Paulo Botter has done interesting work in mercury pollution in Suriname, the mercury level in atmosphere, and even mercury level in human population. So I believe that my humble recommendation is that within this project, the project of the NAP should take advantage of this technical capacity in order to support them. So I believe that this could get a very interesting outputs. So this was quite briefly, quite snapped my presentation for today. So if you have any question, and we can answer at the end of this seminar. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Rodrigo, for highlighting the importance of inventories when it comes to mercury releases, and most important, to be able to update on a regular basis the inventories. Thank you very much. We'll continue with the next topic on the agenda, and that is on environmentally responsible mining techniques in the MSAS project. Before I introduce the speakers, I just want to add that you can just write down your questions or remarks or comments in the Q&A box, because it's important for us to have an interaction today on this webinar. The next topic is on environmentally responsible mining techniques in the MSAS project. We have two speakers. First, I would like to introduce Anil Prasad. He has over 25 years of experience working in the government, semi-government institutions, and the private sector, ranging from consumer products, production companies, and engineering. He was with a team when NIMOS started 22 years ago, and we joined NIMOS in 2016 in the position of Senior Program Advisor. In this role, he is supporting the environmental projects in implementation, and is currently also assigned as the interim project manager of the MSAS project. And Anil holds a master's degree in finance and economics and an MBA in management and corporate strategy. I would first like to invite Anil for the next presentation. After Anil, Stefan Metcalf, known as Steve, we call him Steve, will introduce himself and continue with the presentations. Anil, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Angela. I will share my screen now.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. One moment, please. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I'll have a very brief introduction of the MSAS project. The MSAS project stands for Improving Environmental Management in the Mining Sector of Suriname, with an emphasis on the artisanal and small-scale gold mining sector. The objectives of this project are twofold. One is to improve the environmental management in the mining sector, gold mining sector of Suriname, with emphasis on small-scale gold mining, and the other one is to promote the uptake of environmentally responsible mining technologies. We've heard both ministers today talking about the importance of environmental responsible mining. So we're very pleased to hear that we have the support from them. The project is working towards 4 outcomes. One is institutional and technical capacity of the stakeholders involved in the project. Also working towards strong policy and planning framework for management of the environmental impacts of artisanal and small-scale gold mining. Most important, and Steve will continue on the aspect of uptake of environmental responsible mining techniques. And of course, knowledge sharing being at the national and regional level is what we're working towards. Time frame for the activities in this project is a 7-year project. And I will not spend too much time on this because Steve has a very extensive presentation. But as you can see, the 4 components we need to reach the outcomes within 7 years. The project structure, there's a project management unit supported by a stakeholders platform and overseen by a project board. The approach, of course, is that stakeholder engagement is very important, also highlighted by the Minister of Natural Resources. Institutional strengthening is what we're working towards. Demonstration and training of miners in alternative mining techniques, and awareness and knowledge sharing, very important. And of course, the project is being funded by the Global Environmental Facility through the UNDP. And there are several contributors to this project with non-financial contributions. The assumptions in order to be successful in this project are continuous government support, and I can't stress that any more than what both ministers have addressed earlier. So we're very happy to hear that the government is supporting this initiative. We need to have participation of women in the areas to ensure full benefit from the outcome. Active participation of local miners to customize processes for future use. Collaboration of concession holders to support the technologies, training, and demonstration that we intend to achieve with this project. We need cooperation from all stakeholders to use the environmentally responsible mining techniques. Of course, when we're talking about stakeholders, these are the stakeholders, the government, indigenous and tribal communities are very important because ASGM takes place in these areas and communities. Private sector, NGOs, the small-scale mining companies with rights are important. The multinationals are also one of the major stakeholders in this project, and of course our education institutes are very important. With that, I have come to the end of my very brief presentation. We are very happy to address any issues or questions that you have. There are 2 email addresses here. And with this, I would like to hand it over to Steve for his presentation.
Thanks, Anil. Can you confirm that you can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you clear.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm having a little trouble. I've joined the club here of technical Luddites here. Stand by. Oh, shoot.
Steve, do you want me to share it?
Yeah, I'm trying to share the screen here. Am I screen share? Okay. I believe it's shared.
Can you put it on slideshow?
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So I regret that I didn't have Angela give an introduction of myself. She was so flattering to everybody. I would have enjoyed the flattery, and I'll have to flatter myself with my own introduction. So I'm going to take a quick look at the benefits and problems of artisanal gold mining. Look at the qualities of environmental responsible mining and the importance of underlying relationship with miners and empowerment. The MTECs, we'll take a look at the MTECs, the Mining Technology Extension Centers, and then I'll conclude with some remarks about a Swiss-funded project in Mongolia, which, as far as I know, is the only really successful mercury reducing project in artisanal mining to date. So I'm a geologist and a mining engineer. I've been in large-scale gold mining exploration in northern and western Canada. I've been involved in ASM since 2005 when I did my graduate studies with Marcelo Vega, whom many of you already know, at the University of British Columbia. I've worked in Africa, Latin America, and Asia. Africa predominantly in Rwanda. It wasn't gold mining there, it was 3Ts. But I've worked in Latin America and Ecuador and Guyana and Asia, in Afghanistan and Mongolia. I was the coordinator of education and awareness for the UNIDO Global Mercury Project in the mid-noughts. And I recently helped design a biodiversity mainstreaming program for the UNDP in Guyana. So I have some familiarity with the conditions on the ground that the miners are facing in Suriname. I'm based in Canada, which is a long ways, and it's even longer now with the COVID pandemic. We're proceeding very quickly towards a full lockdown in our province, and I'm hoping that the vaccinations and the conditions will avail the availability to travel in the spring. It's very difficult to get a good grip on what's happening technically in the field, of course, if I can't travel there. And I'm relying on colleagues in Suriname at this point, including Tirza Karsowajojo at UNICEF. So it's important to say a few words about, I think, the benefits of artisanal and small scale mining. So millions of miners support their families, and many of them are women. It's a critical poverty alleviation program for poor people around the world. They're in Peru. They framed the Gamma project around the slogan, "Artisanal mining is a golden opportunity for the poor." So artisanal miners helps communities develop solidarity, cooperation, democracy, and justice, and get a hold of tools to empower themselves. Of course, we all know the problems facing artisanal mining: diseases, moral failures, drug use, hygiene, problematic sanitation conditions, and mercury use. But I should say that miners don't really recognize the problems that mercury is bringing with them. It's a kind of a secret sleeping disease. So when we talk about environmentally responsible mining, it's more than just adopting better equipment for mineral processing. Projects that focus on equipment have invariably failed. And so we need to follow a holistic strategy, working with the whole mine life cycle from prospecting through mine closure, and addressing the social needs of the miners and their communities, and acknowledging that they have human rights to education, to employment, to safe work environments. We need to develop a long-term relationships with miners, and this project has the benefit of being framed over 7 years, and this can give us time enough to develop relationships with miners, and I hope that we can establish a sustainable mining technology training extension centers that have long legs and can last beyond even the lifetime of the project. So miners aren't naturally inclined to adopt new practices. They have to see them working, and if they don't see them working, they're not going to be interested. And if they don't see them working on real ore, then it's not going to be sufficiently convincing. So what we want to do is set up these training centers. We can set out 2 or 3 of them, and I'd like to see them developing an area, a leased concession from perhaps one of the large-scale mining companies operating in Suriname, or from a local Surinamese concession holder, where we can mine and process ore on the spot, and have a facility where training takes place, where healthcare is delivered, where you have the ability to change from one mineral processing circuit to another. If a miner says, well, I'm sure that if we did it this way, it's going to work better, and we can have an inventory of equipment on hand that allows us to shift the circuit and either disprove or prove the miner's belief.
Steve, just a second. You have 1 minute left.
I have 1 minute left.
Yeah.
This is short. Let me talk briefly about where we want to put the training center. Currently, we're thinking about the White House area, and we're going to have Tirsa from UNISAT travel to the field in December and meet with communities. I was particularly interested and impressed with the Minister of Natural Resources emphasizing that stakeholder consultation and developing the project in collaboration with the mining communities is key. And I'm really looking forward to support from the ministry in that regard. A brief word on the timeline. As I say, we hope to continue and come up with a tentative site selection in December and begin procurement in the first quarter of 2021 and mobilize to the site with at least basic equipment in the second quarter. I'll skip the MTech curriculum slide. We can come back to that later if we want. And also the exploration techniques. There are some simple drilling methods that allow people to get a better idea of what the ground is and predict their profitability. Equipment, we're looking at some geophysics equipment, hammer mills, ball mills, centrifuges, scrubber trommels, shaking tables, and retorts, of course. And I think that it's important to address the gold buying shops. A lot of the mercury losses, let's say 20–25% of the mercury losses occur at gold buying shops, and they're a source of contamination for the community surrounding them. And it's low-hanging fruit. We can install good mercury vapor collection systems in these locations and eliminate exposures. Mongolia, it's worth noting that it has, as I indicated, successfully formalized and reduced mercury use over the last 10 years at least, maybe 15 years. There's been a program going, the Sustainability and Artisanal Mining Program. I'm rushing through these things so that you get a sense of at this point, what their MTech looked like. So you have some milling equipment. This could be hammer mills or ball mills. This is a Muller mill, typically used in this part of Asia. They found, interestingly, that sluices were able to recover more gold than centrifuges. And it's important to keep that in mind. I skipped over this slide that talked about sluice optimization, but there's easy improvements that can happen when you optimize your sluice design. Again, here I am in my little town far away from the action, sadly, and I thank you for your time. I'm happy to take questions in the Q&A section. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve, for your presentation. I'm sorry for rushing you because time is not really our best friend right now. So we'll have to continue with the last speaker, who will be presenting on JEF Gold Plus, a global opportunities for the ASGM sector. And Chantal Landorg will present this presentation. She has a bachelor degree in environmental science and has a master's degree in sustainable management of natural resources from the Anton de Gom University of Suriname, with over 13 years of experience as an environmental consultant in Suriname. And throughout her career, she has been working for the government, multinationals, local companies, international organizations working in Suriname, and local NGOs. Her work includes all stages of project cycles, either for donor organizations or grantees, field work on aquatic, marine, and terrestrial biodiversity, water quality assessments and training, revegetation assessments in the mining sites, and various environmental assessments, whether in the field or desk study. Chantal, give the floor to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I will turn on my screen share. Just a moment. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, I'll start right away. So I will build on everybody's presentation, and I'll tell you about the JEF Gold Plus initiative, and which is about global opportunities for the ASGM sector. Okay, so a brief overview of gold mining in Suriname. Gold is one of the most important commodities in Suriname, and exploration started in the second half of the 19th century. There's a long history of ASGM, with a modern gold rush starting in the early 1990s. And ASGM provides right now between 20,000 and 40,000 direct and indirect livelihood benefits. The ASGM relies on gravity concentration and mercury amalgamation of sediments and causes river pollution, tropical deforestation, and land degradation. Through low access to finance, skills, and formal market undermines their progress. As you've seen also from previous presentations, there are different initiatives related to ASGM worldwide, and in Suriname, there was the Minamata Convention to which Suriname acceded in 2018, and there have been multiple steps since then. There's the National Adaptation Plan, the Minamata Initial Assessment, and as Anil and Steve presented, the MSAX project, where they're trying to improve environmental management in the mining sector with emphasis to ASGM. And so what I'm going to be highlighting is the Gold Plus initiative, which is part of GEF 7, which is a follow-up of all the other initiatives. So the aim of the current initiatives is to reduce the use of mercury and increase incomes in the artisanal and small-scale gold mining sector. And to do that through a holistic and multi-sectoral integrated formalization approach and increasing access to finance, and also leading to adoption of sustainable mercury-free technologies and access to traceable gold supply chains. And so keep in mind that what I'll be highlighting is basically not the implementation of the project, but we will be developing a project document in the coming months. And so the project preparation grant team consists of different groups of people. We have the UNDP, the regional hub in Panama, and also the Suriname country office. The government of Suriname will also be involved, the Ministry of Natural Resources, other ministries and institutions as well. Furthermore, there is a team of consultants. We have an international team with Jose Maria Blanco being the team leader. Kirsten Dales is the international ASGM specialist. And there will also be an international gender and finance specialist be hired. And furthermore, we will have a national team. I am the national coordinator of the team. And furthermore, we'll be hiring an ASGM specialist and a gender specialist. So what will happen in the coming months? This is the timeline. We will be recruiting the full project preparation grant team in November and December. And so the real work can start next year in January. The virtual kickoff of the project will take place in December, and I'll tell you more about that in my last slide. So starting from January, when all the consultants are hired, we'll be working on the baseline, establishing partnerships with different parties, different stakeholders, and formulating the theory of change. And after having all of this in place, having all of the necessary information, we will move on to formulating the project document, which needs to be ready around May next year, and also formulating the mandatory annexes to this product document. Furthermore, as for such a process, we'll need to have the GEF CEO endorsement request, which needs to be finalized, and after which we'll have a validation workshop. And so as you can see, this is a very strict timeline we have to deal with. And it's really important that a lot of people are involved, but also that we also meet this timeline. So that would be quite a challenge for us. As for the people that will be involved as stakeholders, but also some of them also as co-financers, you can see the different categories here. We have the government of Suriname, For example, the Ministry of Natural Resources will play an important role, the Ministry of Spatial Planning and Environment, other ministries and institutions from the government. There is civil society, for example, gender and environment-related organizations and indigenous and tribal people. As for the beneficiaries, of course, the miners and their representative organizations. There are a number of miners organizations and also CBOs that are active in these mining communities, in or around these mining communities. As for the private sector, we've identified the artisanal small-scale gold mining, but also the large-scale gold mining companies, laboratories, suppliers of goods and services for the ASGM sector, and representative organizations of the private sector. And of course, there will be a lot of data necessary for the PPG. And so we'll also involve a number of institutions like academia and knowledge institutions like ADEC and institutions related to ADEC. UNASAT, I think Steve also already mentioned UNASAT just now, and other organizations like the Forestry Service, Hydrological Service, etc., and medical organizations. And finally, as I've mentioned, there needs to be access to finance for these ASGM companies. So we'll also include banks and the pension fund and other financial institutions in the process of formulating the product document. And so by involving all of these organizations that I listed here, we hope to come to a good formulation of the PPG, because then of the project document, so we can come up with a very take into account all different approaches and things that we need to take into account when for the implementation of the project. So that is basically a brief summary of what we'll be doing. I will keep it to this presentation right now, because we will have a launch of our project in December, on the 10th of December. And I have a very long list of stakeholders that we will contact and invite. But if you would like to be invited, please don't hesitate to email me. And also for further questions, you can also email me at a later point. Thanks.
Thank you, Chantal, for giving us a brief overview of global opportunities for the ASGM sector. You summarized some current activities that are being carried out under JEF6 and the launch of, I believe, Gold Plus under the JEF7. We will continue with the Q&A session. Please don't hesitate to give questions and to write your questions in the chat box or in the Q&A box. Are there some final thoughts before closing this part of the webinar from the panelists? Do they maybe want to emphasize something? No? I believe we can go straight forward to the Q&A sessions. I want to invite Rafaela for guiding us through the questions.
So, hi everyone. We have a question from Natalie Emanuels. Her question is for the Minister of Natural Resources. and it goes as following. As the minister mentioned that mercury-free mining is a must, she's interested in how this will be reflected within the new development plan. From the central government, what are or will be the main priorities for the ASGM? This is for the Minister of Natural Resources.
Is Minister Abiamofo still with us? I believe you're on mute, Minister Abiamofo. No? Okay, maybe one of the panelists can react on the question.
Maybe Angela, we can make the or agree with Natalie and all other attendees who have questions, because the minister is still in. I see him; his name is still in the list, but maybe that he's not at his desk at the moment. So maybe we can skip through to another one, and then we can ask the minister for a written answer that we can send. We can then send to the attendees.
May I cut in? I see that there's a question from the ministry. Clyde Griffith is asking what the question was. Maybe he can answer the question for the minister.
Yes, I will repeat the question. The question was, the minister mentioned that mercury-free mining is a must, and Natalie is interested to know in how this will be reflected within the new development plan. From the central government, what are or will be the main priorities for ASGM?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Yes, good afternoon.
Yes. So
welcome.
Indeed, that was. Thank you very much. Yes. So indeed, that's what the minister mentioned. So at the moment, we are looking at some methods to implement policy with regard to let's say mercury-free mining, and there are some interesting methods out there. We were introduced to climate smart mining. That's something which we are looking at the moment right now, as well as also other initiatives we are exploiting just to fulfill our end with regard to the Minamata Convention. Next week, I think in the first week of December, the minister will visit French Guiana, where they have a facility where they are also doing quick mercury-free mining. So we are busy together with the World Bank. We're also looking at some policy. We're looking at some input to be able to implement this policy as soon as we can.
Thank you, Clyde, for answering the question. Maybe we can continue with another question, Rafaela. Oh, Monique. Sorry, Monique will continue with the other question.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. This question is for Steve. So there is a question regarding the comparison of Suriname and Mongolia. If you can talk more about it and why the project in Mongolia was successful.
Sure. Can everybody hear me?
Yes,
I'm
we can hear you.
I can't start my video.
It's fine. We can hear you, Steve.
Okay. Well, it was successful because there was a long-term commitment. And the government engaged it. It took on its responsibilities to ensure that the human rights of the miners were achieved. Another important characteristic of the project was it had consistency of international and local staff, and that ensured that there was a relationship evolving, a trust relationship evolving over time. They had sufficient funding to set up these MTECs, a slide of which I showed, and they empowered the mining cooperatives that brought their ore to these training sites. So in short, it's the recognition of the miners and the respect from the government that they have rights, that the government is a rights it's a duty bearer, and it has the responsibility, the duty to ensure that the rights are achieved, and that the miners also have reciprocal responsibilities to pay taxes and to normalize their practices. So that's it in a nutshell. There's many publications about this project at the Sustainability and Artisanal Mining website, Mongolia. Does that answer your question?
I think it does. Yes, he says thank you. It does answer his question. Thank you, Steve.
Sure.
Yes. There is another question. Rafaela will read that out.
So there are questions, or let's say remarks for Mr. Metcalf. Suriname doesn't have mining communities, and Natalie recommends that plans initiatives are adopted to the Suriname situation. The next question is, why is there a yellow pin within the Bronze Beret Nature Park area? This is for Steve.
Sure. The yellow pin just indicated for my remote visits via Google Earth where Brownsburg Park is in relationship to the area that we've been talking about setting up an MTEC. So Suriname doesn't have mining communities. I understand that there's a community near the Rosebell mine, which is a community that isn't only miners, but it's a maroon community, and that's what I'm referring to when I'm talking about mining communities. Can the questioner be more specific about how she sees the communities in these mining areas?
Yes, there's also one more question from the same person. The SEPRO system, who will be the owner of the system, and are these for demonstration purposes or production? And can you, Natalie, can you be more specific about the mining communities, as Steve mentioned?
So the SEPRO system, or any equipment that we buy, and we may in the end choose not to buy an integrated SEPRO system, But any equipment will be owned by the MSAG's project. Are they for demonstration purposes or production? Well, there's some discussion going on about that now, and the feeling is that it would be good to show miners all of the technical elements to model good practice through the whole mine life cycle, which means exploration and production and refining and closure. So yes, I would think that it's possible that it would be used for production, but we still have to continue our discussion about this. It's complex if we start to get into issues around production. Does that answer your question, Natalie?
Is it clear, Natalie?
She said yes.
Good.
Are there more questions, Rafaela and Monique?
I see one more from Natalie. So in Suriname, where there is mining settlements or set up, but we don't have the typical mining communities, such as in some Latin American countries. This was one more remark from her.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you.
All right, there is a question. What is the difference between the KEF Gold project and MSAS project? I see that they are both financed by Jeff. So who wants to answer this question from the panelists?
Maybe I can answer what the MSAS project is about. The MSAS project is focusing on environmental management in the small-scale mining sector. I'm not sure about what the Jeff Gold project will be looking at specifically, but MSAS is looking at environmental management and introducing environmental responsible mining techniques. As Steve indicated in his presentation, various methods that were used in other countries, and that showed that the yield could be higher than the way gold is being mined in Suriname.
Yes, I'll add as for the Jeff Gold project. You know, the focus is indeed on reducing the use of mercury and also increasing the incomes of the ASGM sector, and doing this by formalization and also increasing access to finance. So if these companies want to shift to a different technologies, etc., they need to have access to finance. So that needs to be available, and so and also give them access to traceable gold supply chains. So just putting all the different things in place to make this shift possible. And maybe, I'm not sure if Brian has anything he wants to add to that.
Chantal, unfortunately, we have to close the Q&A session because we're running out of time. So I'm sorry, but if you have any questions or remarks, you can also email all the panelists. The email addresses will be seen in the presentation that will be shared afterwards. So thank you once again, everyone, for participating in this webinar. I would like to invite our General Director, Cedric Nelom, for some closing remarks. Cedric, the floor is yours. Cedric, are you there?
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, Cedric.
All right. Thank you very much, Angela. Indeed, I wish that we had more time allocated for this because of the discussion that was coming up. But first of all, let me start saying that thank you to NIMOS, UNDP, Jeff, and the panelists, those that have presented definitely for their contribution. I also see that some actors from the private sector, NGO, and other government agency participated in this webinar. This is a first webinar. It's a first in a series of webinars that we want to set up with respect to what we are doing as an organization when it comes to especially the implementation of the Minamata Convention. I want to thank both ministers, the Minister of Spatial Planning and Environment, as well as the Minister of Natural Resources for their contribution as well. And what I took away from all the presentations, including those from the ministers, is that although we do have a lot of initiative activities that are taking place, I think we definitely should take a look at them again and then work towards more inclusion of stakeholders. I'm very much pleased to hear that when it comes to engagement of local communities, that the Ministry of Natural Resources would like to spearhead us into that direction. For the projects that we currently are implementing, MSAS is certainly very feasible and very much promising in the sense that when we look at technologies, and that's one of the bigger areas we have been talking about in the past years as a country, as organizations, that we want to move into mercury-free technology. One of the things that we definitely would like to guarantee and look after is that we work together with the miners, those that will use the technology to come up with the most suitable technology for Suriname. So we need to make it a Surinamese adopted technology if we want to move forward. In closing, I definitely saw one of the questions with respect to the MSAX project and the GAF Gold project. I think one of the things we can say is that perhaps the MSAX project is looking more at the downstream of the mining system in Suriname, and the CAF project should look at the upstream, making things upfront, the technology, indeed applying incentives perhaps for the miners to adopt technologies. These are things that certainly would have to look at in preparing such a project. But again, I want to thank everybody for their participation. Thank you very much. And we look forward to your contribution in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Cedric, for your closing remarks. I think we've come to an end of this webinar. Once again, participants, panelists, thank you. And until next time, goodbye and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you, Angela.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.